Welcome to Wellraiser Radio. I'm your host, Joshua Coburn. With me, as always, is the mighty Shane Scala and sweet Simon Sanborn. Today's guest, I'm super excited about, Robbie Ripoll. You guys may have seen him on Spike TV's Inkmasters. He's a tattoo artist and all-around amazing individual. He always talks about love as a special ingredient in life and tattooing. And he gets real with us. He gets honest and vulnerable. There may be a few tears. I mean, it's a super cool episode. I'm really excited for you guys to tune in. Check it out right now.
Josh, we didn't script this, but yesterday I went over to my mom's place to see if I can help her out with some stuff. And she ended up saying, I don't need you for any of these projects, but can we sit down and talk for a while? Yeah. And I had asked her, I said, well, before, we kind of get into what you wanted to talk to me about, I have a question for you. I'm going to be a part of this new show. And there's going to be some really heavy things that are going to be talked about. And would you be okay if I brought up this or I brought up that about, my childhood and growing up and stuff like that? And she said, I feel totally fine with that. I'm at peace with who I am right now. And
beautiful.
We started talking about anger and perspective, and we had like this 2-hour conversation. I said, I wish I would have had the cameras and the microphones rolling because this would have been a great podcast.
Yeah, wow.
But one of her comments to me, which goes back to what Robbie had briefly mentioned, was this thought of suicide when life gets really hard. And my mom had brought this up, and she goes, I really wish that we would stop with this this feeling that we can't use that word. It's taboo to use that word. Let's not talk about it. So anytime anybody it's not an alien feeling to feel like the world is on your shoulders and you just can't deal with it anymore. And if we would just take that taboo, that label off of that word, people could talk about, I'm at a super low point in my life. The suicide thought has entered my mind. I don't want to go to the hospital. I just need some extra love right now and support.
Well, and I think Josh can probably relate to this too, that you working in schools and myself being a teacher, that I hear it all the time. I mean, it's a constant discussion within schools and things like that because bullying is such a big thing now. Suicide is happening a lot from bullying, as I think it probably always has. It's becoming more. People are becoming more aware now. But I mean, that must be something that you hit on all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that to your point, Shane, that there is a stigma attached to that word suicide, and it's because it's kind of scary. When I speak, in front of sometimes thousands of individuals, I mention specifically that I had the thought of choosing to end my life. Like, you're nullifying something living and you're ending it. Like, that's huge. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a major impact to kind of say, oh my gosh, ending my life. And then everybody kind of internalizes that. I mean, I think it's huge because just mentioning it, and Robbie, thank you for mentioning it as well, just getting it out there, saying it out loud kind of puts an ease on things. It's like it's on the table. We can talk about it all day long. I mean, I was there. Obviously, Robbie, you were there when you struggled. I mean, for me, gosh, I was like 15 the first time I thought about it, really got serious about it at age 20. Mm-hmm. And it was because of a lot of change, a lot of upheaval in my life. Robbie, you mentioned that your thoughts of suicide really started to creep in when you were kind of dealing with a lot of change as well, when your large studio was closing, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, because I had a small studio. It was awesome. It was cool. Then I had a couple new artists coming in the piercer, so we upgraded to the super large studio. I had a super large house I was renting. I was just living this lavish life that I thought I was supposed to live, and I thought that's what I wanted. And I was about 33, 34 at the time. And I'm only 35 now, so it was like last year. But I closed the studio, and I didn't grasp the concept of failing forward at the time. I just felt like a failure. I'm not sure if you can see it, an I'm Rad tattoo.
Ah, nice.
Cool.
That I got a long time ago to help me remember in those times. And it didn't work. The tattoo didn't do shit for me because I was so deep and I was so terrified of life. I didn't want a tattoo anymore. I didn't want to live anymore. I just wanted to sleep and be in bed. You know, like being around my wife was pretty much the only thing that made me feel better because she understands me more than most. And I had this brief thought of suicide, and it only came in for a few seconds. And because of her and my son, I pulled myself out of it immediately. I chastised myself. I told myself, this isn't acceptable, and you have to move on. But I mean, dude, suicide is just as normal a feeling as guilt or jealousy or anger or happiness. You know, I mean, how many people haven't had that thought in their life? You know, I mean, you hit something really tough and you feel like you can't pull out of it. Well, ending it's going to be a lot easier, right? You know, so having that extra love and support and then just the mental wellness of just knowing, hey, I'm going to be okay. Everything heals. You know, the days continue with or without me. And, you know, even though I'm in an inconceivable place that I can't find the end right now, I know that the end is going to come, regardless of if I know it's there. If I see it, I know it's there. So it's helped me to change my perspective a lot. I mean, I started reading a lot of motivational books, listening to a lot of audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos. I study your stuff, Josh.
Oh, thank
you. Know, like I'm always on the social media trying to promote happiness and wellness and trying to find other things to fill my life with rather than sadness, depression, and fears. Because I realized that the more we operate out of fear, the worse our life is. So, you know, and one of my favorite quotes that I constantly see on the internet is, on the other side of fear is exactly everything you've always wanted.
Totally.
And I think suicide is a giant fear-based thing. You know, we're just afraid of failure. So, or success, which is one of the things I realized. I'm afraid of my own success. I'm afraid that I'm going to get as big as I've always wanted and make the money I've always wanted to make and be the change I've always wanted to be. And I guess I'm just afraid it's going to be too heavy for me, you know, or you know, between the fear of failure, between the fear of too many people needing me, I'd probably rather do it easier sometimes, you know? So it's really weird. So I just try the most I can to get on the other side of fear. That's why I love human body suspension. That's why I do it partially so much, because you get past that fear and you find fun, man. I fly, and most people aren't able to fly. It's like having a jetpack on. So it's, you know, it's a really cool something that I can get on the other side of fear.
I was going to ask you, Robbie, did you have anybody when you were growing up that kind of helped you be able to work through those things? I mean, I think of the same thing probably that you do about Josh and how inspirational he can be to kids and really bring these things to the forefront. Did you have anybody when you were younger or things that you knew or learned growing up that helped you get through some of those tough times? Besides, I mean, obviously you did some work as an adult, but as a kid, did you have anybody that stepped in and helped you out, or did your dad kind of help you with those things?
My mom and dad were always there to tell me that I was a good person. You know, they were always there to talk to me. My dad would give me books. Like, he gave me a book called Creating Affluence one time. I can't remember the author, but it was a really cool book. I was just a very stubborn kid, and it was hard for me to grasp what they were saying. You know, I've had such limiting beliefs most of my life. I love my brother. I don't like him a lot of the time and the way he acts, but he was very good at trying to keep me down for his happiness. He's got a lot of demons. We all do. And it's sad to see that our relationship has revolved around him keeping me under his thumb a lot. And he was my best friend mostly growing up. We moved around a lot, so I didn't really have friends. My brother was my friend. And he kind of could manipulate me in the ways he could. So it was weird. I didn't really have a whole lot of people pulling me up because I couldn't get there. Between my outside influences and my own personal self, I just couldn't come out of it. Granted, my dad was one of my biggest inspirations most of my life, because I mean, he was a Cuban refugee, came over here at 12 years old, and I mean, the guy has built, you know, quite a good business for himself, and he just continued to build businesses, and he's always been an entrepreneur. And he was always the guy, you know, that was on top of doing his thing rather than what the people wanted him to do. So that's always been a huge help to going my own way and trusting myself. But as parents do, they judge you. They don't like some of the things you do. So me being my own person didn't always go over well all the time. So it was a very hard way. Like, I've never had anybody like Josh that would just love me unconditionally without judgment. As a kid, there was always judgment there, So I think I had to get out of my own judgment zone to start finding the people that were going to judge me less.
Nice.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of amazing points there. I mean, you bring up the fact that sometimes you weren't always surrounded by great people, but now you're learning to surround yourself with more good people who build you up and help you grow rather than tear you down or manipulate you or whatever. You also brought up the fact that you had to step away from your own judgment. You had to kind of remove yourself from that so you could see kind of how other people viewed you and everybody else. Those are super valid points. And I guess what I wanted to throw at you is, as an adult, obviously you're still working on yourself. Do you still deal with that judgment? Do you process it quite the same as you did when you were 15 or 16?
I don't even know that guy from 15 or 16 anymore. He was quite the douchebag.
We all were, Robbie. We all
were, absolutely.
Right? And I used to punish people verbally because I'm really slick with my tongue. I grew up fat and I always got picked on. So I learned how to fight back with my words because my dad would kill me if I got any less than A's and B's and came home beating up people at school. So I had to be ingenuitive. I had to find my way to win. So I just started talking shit to people all the time. I was the best guy at just making you feel bad about yourself and then smiling about it and being like, no, it's okay. We're friends. And,
it's kind of like how it is in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. It was my way of like passing my judgment of myself and them onto them, putting a smile on it, and then acting like, oh no, it's not that, it's cool. But now I find myself driving and I'm like, this is stupid. And I'm like, no, this is somebody who's in a hurry, just like I am some days, So I'm really learning to stop that negative self-talk about myself and others. And, let's talk about the realest ever relationship with your spouse. There's sometimes my brain goes nuts talking bad about the woman that I love more than anyone I've ever met in my whole life, and I have to tell my brain, hey, she's doing a great job. She loves you, and she's been yelled at by you before. She does not want to make you mad. She's doing everything in her power to keep smiles and happiness and, be the glue that holds a household together. So, I've really learned to stop judging and hating everyone around me and accepting that it's my own self-hate. It's my own self-judgment. I'm worried about myself. And if I can nick that and if I can kill that, then here we go. Now I'm a better human being and the people around me are going to benefit from it better. And then I'm going to benefit from it better. So the benefits are huge all the way around when you stop talking bad about everything in your brain. It just takes a lot of work, and I do a lot of meditation.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a lot of good insight. If I could sneak back just a little ways, something that you and I are both very familiar with, my coming from the body modification world back in the day, and providing the service of suspension for people. You mentioned how that kind of changed you a bit, and I know, Shane, you had some questions kind of regarding suspensions and stuff like that for Robbie, right?
Well, for people who don't understand or who have never heard of suspension, Robbie, can you explain what suspension is, and then I kind of want you to go into like what prompted you to go into suspension.
Okay. Suspension, the long and the short of it is they put hooks in you, they pierce you, they put hooks in you, they pick you up off the ground, and you receive a feeling or emotion or a mindset or a state of being from it. For me, I started suspending because I read a book called Return to the Tribal many years ago, and I saw Fakir Musafar doing his Okipa, which is chest suspension, and it was a very ritualistic thing. So I started looking into it, and then I started reading about Fakir. And Fakir does suspension from a spirit-based sense. He gets in tune with himself, he gets in tune with nature, he gets in tune with his surroundings, and it's about pushing yourself to these levels of achievement and accomplishment that you really couldn't receive in such an intense manner anywhere else in such a short amount of time. So about 2011 came around, I finally had the balls to do it. I traded somebody at a convention I gave a tattoo to his wife, and he had his apprentice put me up for my first suspension from my back. And it was amazing. It was so moving. I almost cried, but I was in front of a group full of people and I wasn't as self-aware back then, so I wasn't able to cry in public groups. So I held it in. And then my second suspension, I bawled my face off because it was in my backyard and my whole family was around and my brother was there and he also got suspended. My mom and dad were there. And my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, was there, and my son was there. And they were all like cheering me on, and it was great because everybody was so excited to like see everybody go up, you know, because it was so inconceivable for all of us, you know, because it was so brand new to all of us. You know, I introduced suspension to my whole family.
So you get pierced that day, right then and there.
That day, right then and there.
You get pierced, and then they suspend you.
Yes. So, okay, you've got anticipation of getting piercings.
Sure.
You've got anticipation of coming off the ground, and then you've got the fear of dying, or you know, the skin ripping and stuff like that.
Oh,
when you're
gosh.
when you're newer into it. Now
Sure.
I don't have the fear of ripping anymore. Now I know that if you tear, you know, your practitioner is going to sew you up. You know, so you know, it's not the end of the world. And if you tear out completely, you do have another hook in you. You know, unless you're doing a single point, or you may have multiple hooks in you. But a lot of the time, the tearing is very minimal, and it doesn't do anything other than just cause you to have to come down because you may rip all the way out. So yeah, it's really wacky, man. But yeah, they pierce you, they put hooks in you, they string you up, they pick you up, and then they pull the hooks out of you.
Probably the most well-known, maybe, by pop culture of suspension is from the movie The Cell.
Yes, I was thinking about that with Vincent D'Onofrio. Yeah,
I love that movie.
So,
Absolutely.
do you feel like, in any way, that gave like a negative connotation to suspension? Did it help or hamper that mentality?
I don't know if it helped or hampered, but yes, it has everything. It's given a negative face to suspension, but it's actually true. You know, he was a sick, twisted individual. He needed something to come out of himself. And when you put yourself through that type of fear and pain and anticipation, you're going to go outside of yourself. So rather than drinking or drugs, it's an escape in a sense. And I used to be a crazy drunk. I used to love drinking, but now suspension is my favorite escape, you know? So, I think for people that don't know, it could have put a negative connotation on it, but it's a movie. Who really cares?
Right.
You know, I mean, if you really care that much or really are that interested in suspension, you're going to look into it further than seeing it on the cell. And so, you know, I feel like the people that are going to live in their ignorance, that don't want to know what the Matrix is about, will have a negative viewpoint on it. But, you know, the people that are ready to take that blue pill and, you know, go for that ride, they're going to figure it out, you know?
Right.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, that's a good point, because as twisted as that person was, he was escaping the abuse that he suffered as a child. I mean, there is a part of that in that movie where you kind of have people hate the idea of understanding somebody who is a tortured soul, but that was part of that movie for sure. And so the Sundance idea is that part of suspension for you, or is that the gentleman you were speaking of? Because Little Big Man was the first movie I ever saw with Dustin Hoffman as a kid that had the Sundance in it, and I remember that scene, and that reminds me of suspension every time I think of it.
Right. It's not as heavy because the Sundance is more of something you kind of have to do. You know, like it's a coming of age thing. But suspension was definitely a coming of age for me. You know, I literally walked around after my first suspension for probably about a month having to tell myself, dude, you're not invincible. Stop thinking that way. Because it was so powerful what I got from it. So yeah, man, I think anything involving suspension, if it's pure of heart, is all going to basically come from the same place. But then there are guys that are like, oh, I'm such a badass. I could go for my chest the first time because everybody says it's scary and it hurts. You know, and that's the guy that's probably not going to come off the ground. And if he does, he's going to cry because of pain, not because of emotion. Right. He probably won't take anything good out of it. And then he's going to beat himself up when he leaves because he did it for all the wrong reasons.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, really, it's funny because a lot of the people that I suspend with say they love watching me suspend, and I'm one of their favorites. because it's from such a deep, soulful place. You know, I either growl with this like crazy type of like screaming like fuck yes, you know, or I'm giggling my face off like a crazy person cutting the head off a cat, you know. Like,
poor kitty.
Well, I think part of it is that you do so many of the things that you do in your life from such a joyful place. I think that's probably why it's infectious and why people enjoy it so much. Have you ever suspended, Josh?
You know what? I provided the service a lot, but I actually never suspended. And you know, the reason I didn't, and this is a perfect kind of segue into the question I wanted to ask, because I would provide that to somebody, and like Robbie mentioned, when he tattoos, he connects in a way that people who don't perform those kinds of things will never. Now I'm going to get all emotional. Will maybe never understand, because I'll never forget. It was sunset. And, you know, I was doing a resurrection suspension, which is 6 hooks in the front of a young lady. It was our first suspension. It was, you know, sunset, the shadows, you know, it was just the most amazing thing. And this girl was crying as we hoisted her up, and I'm crying. The other guy I was working with was crying, and it was the most intense thing in the world, because you knew that all the pain that she had suffered because she'd been abused, she was taking it back. She was taking back her body from, you know, the people who took it from her. And it's unreal, like those feelings. So I never did suspend, because I thought, you know what, I'm feeling it for them. And many times, you know, it wasn't just about me.
Sure.
So it was so intense. I just never did it. Even today, I don't have a desire to do it, because I did it for so many people, and it was unbelievable.
I was just going to say, we might have a good gathering for Robbie and the three of us. We can all try it.
Totally.
I'd be down for
dude, we could totally set that up. I would love something like that, because you want to see 4 big dudes crying like bitches.
Well, I do that all the time anyway. So
okay, cool. I do regularly as well. So
that's
you know,
Friday night for me.
if we could line it up in unison, you know, that would be really fun.
That'd be intense. Well, you'll be in the Midwest soon, right? You got some conventions coming in Chicago, so it's not out of the question, right?
It's not out of the question. Yeah, I definitely, dude. You know, I've been dying to come and just have some good soul time with you. So, you know, I'll definitely we'll talk more about that for sure.
Definitely, door is open. See what you did, Si? That's a big deal.
Well, you know what, Robbie? And you know what too? I'm going to be at a convention where the suspensions happen at the convention, so we could even meet at the Chicago convention. And, you know, maybe even do like some sort of cool little private suspension meet in public, you know?
Wow. And do a little before and after podcast. It'd be kind of cool, too, to see how it kind of affects, you know, that'd be kind of
absolutely. Dude, we could even do a video cast. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're
totally.
Well, all the people we know, all the things that we can make happen. I mean, shoot, this could be something to kind of educate the public a little bit on what it's about, you know.
And I think too, I mean, Shane and I both talked about this. I'll be 45 this year, and it's kind of I gave myself permission, I think, over the last few years of just saying all these things I've been told that are not true, I'm going to try them, or all these things that I don't know about. I'm halfway done with my life, give or take a few years probably.
Yeah.
So I feel like now I'm really coming into an opportunity to try to discover some of these things. So as the words escape my mouth, it scares me. It scares me to death, and now I have butterflies in my tummy.
Yep.
But it still makes me think that's why I want to do it. Then I'm challenging myself, so I think that's a cool opportunity to try.
On the other side of fear, brother. On the other side of fear.